Welcome to the Wits and Weights podcast for busy professionals who want to get strong and healthy with strength training and sustainable diet. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and in each episode, we'll examine strategies to help you achieve physical self-mastery through a healthy skepticism of the fitness industry and a commitment to consistent lifting and nutrition. Welcome to episode 17 of Wits and Weights. Today, I have the honor of hosting a very special guest, Tyla Serro, for the first ever interview on this podcast. Tyla is not only an engineering colleague of mine, we work for the same aerospace company. She finds time to train and compete as a raw powerlifter, placing second this March in the 2022 USPA Connecticut State Championship in her weight class. And she only missed coming in first by a close tiebreaker against her training partner. I invited her on the show because I think her story is very relatable to those of us who are working professionals with busy lives, maybe a full-time job and a family, who still want to find a way to get big, strong, jacked, ripped, fit, toned, lean, healthy, whatever term you want to use. Tyla juggles work, family, and the challenges of life using a sustainable approach to training and nutrition. So I wanted to pick her brain on how she makes it all work. Tyla Serro, thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Philip. It's an honor to be your first guest.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. I know we've talked a lot recently about training, nutrition, excitement, frustration, all these things. I just want you to start off by telling us your story. How did you get into lifting?
Sure. So as Philip mentioned, I work for the same company that he does. And since about March of 2020, we've been working remote. And I'm officially not going back into the office probably ever. I opted to be completely remote. And for me personally, that has been a huge game changer, life hack, in my opinion. I'm not totally against going into the office. If I absolutely need to, I can. But now I became a parent since the start of the pandemic too. So just having that almost 2 hours back in commuting time has really been huge in my ability to do all the things that Philip just mentioned. So
yeah, that makes a huge difference, doesn't it? All that time.
Yeah. But other than that, I'm a wife. I'm a military spouse. My husband is actually in the Air National Guard, and he works at Pratt & Whitney, which is a sister company to the company that Philip and I work for. And he actually just got home from a deployment. We're both into health, wellness, fitness, if you will, but he's a runner and actually training for the Marine Corps Marathon in DC. So wow. I'm not into that.
Different sides of the spectrum, right?
Yeah,
it's all fitness though.
I'd much rather strength train. But other than that, those are probably the least interesting things about me. I think the most interesting thing about me is that I volunteer with a rescue here in Connecticut called Protectors of Animals. And I've been with them since 2018. I work with the rescue dogs. They have cats as well. And I volunteer about 2 hours every week, walking them, feeding them, cleaning kettles, and doing that sort of thing. And that's kind of my passion other than lifting.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we have a couple dogs. One of them's getting up there in age, and yeah, they're part of the family. So
yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So a lot has happened during the pandemic in the last few years. It sounds like your family situation changed. Your husband went on deployment and came back. I've read a lot of your Insta posts about your powerlifting journey. What got you into that? I mean, how did you get to that point here, knowing that you're a busy professional like I am, and there's only so much time for other pursuits?
Sure. So I started competing in the sport of powerlifting in 2016. So it's been about 6 years that I've been competing. And what really got me into that was before then I had been lifting, at like Planet Fitness, commercial type gyms. I did start working out at a CrossFit gym around 2013. That didn't last very long. I got hurt pretty soon into that, doing like overhead snatches and things. And I did something to my shoulder and was like, I just don't think this is for me.
Sounds like a familiar story.
Yeah. It's
for
like
a lot of us. Yeah.
Everybody's intro to CrossFit, but I mean, I could go down a tangent on that, but and so then after that, I was starting college, and I wanted to look good, and that was kind of my primary reason for working out. But I was definitely not doing the right things. I was doing way too much cardio, not eating enough, binge drinking, and doing all sorts of things that were probably negating most of the stuff that I was doing inside of the gym. So I've been working out, I would say, consistently since around 2013. However, in 2016, one of my best friends, who's actually my nutrition coach right now, she did her very first powerlifting meet in Rhode Island and invited me to go be a spectator. And I went. I had no idea what to expect. I kind of had that stereotypical idea of what a powerlifter was or looked like as like somebody that's kind of fat, kind of fit, maybe like sumo wrestler. I didn't really know
big and strong with the emphasis on big.
Yeah,
right?
and I was like, that's not really for girls, is it? But whatever. I went and I was amazed and in awe by watching, 63 kilogram women pulling 400 plus pounds, squatting 300 plus pounds, benching close to 200. And I literally was like, wow, can I be that strong? I want to be that strong. That's so cool. So right around that point, 2016, I was wrapping up my undergrad. I was getting ready to start graduate school. And I started strength training at a local gym called Lightning Fitness. It's in South Windsor. It's a phenomenal facility. The owner actually just bought a bigger space, and they're doing so much more than what it was back then. And that was really kind of like the pivotal
It's all good. It's all good.
Pivotal point in my life where I really started to training kind of became a big part of my life. A lot of the relationships that I have today, friendships, stem from that gym and from the people that I met there. And so, yeah, it's been about 6 years that I started powerlifting. I did my first competition about 3 months into actually working with so my very first coach was actually the owner of that gym, Matt Mills. And about 3 months into training with him, I did my first competition in USAPL down at Gleason's Performance Gym in Derby, Connecticut. And I fell in love. It was so much fun.
So you jumped right in. So I want to take a step back. You mentioned how you started with CrossFit. Your original goal was aesthetics and
right.
getting fit, you had some injuries. You maybe didn't see the results you wanted. And eventually you found strength training. And what it sounds like to me, at least, is you have a passion for the training itself, maybe the process, maybe the competition, and getting strong, which is a very different goal or, immediate goal than aesthetics, even though it kind of gets you that result
For
as
sure.
well. Would you say?
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing because, when you're, I think I was going to say a young person, but I think most people want to look good. And a lot of times you'll hear people say like, I'm exercising, I'm eating right, I'm doing all of these things. And I actually had a coworker recently reach out to me and say, hey, I know you know a lot about like exercising. This is what I'm doing. Like, do you think I should be doing more core workouts? And that's the biggest thing is people will ask about like crunches and sit-ups for abs. And I'm like, it's
getting tone. Yeah.
It sounds so corny, but I remember hearing this years ago, like abs are made in the kitchen. And, that really stuck with me. And you see it through the work that you put in that if you do eat well, 80% of the time, more, if you can eat better, more of the time, great. If that can just be like a habitual thing that you do, you just learn to like eating well, you're going to see body composition changes and the aesthetics will kind of come along with the strength training, if you will. So it's kind of, you get the best of both worlds. You get to be strong and you get to look good.
And I like that you mentioned nutrition because you can't have one without the other unless you want to be an old school powerlifting look, right? You want to get bigger. But yeah, you mentioned nutrition and you also mentioned core work and all of these things. I bet you're getting your squat up to a new PR help your stabilizer muscles as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. So going into core stuff. So I had a baby about 2 years ago. And actually during my pregnancy, I started to notice that my core was changing quite a bit, which is a total normal thing that happens during pregnancy. Your abs literally have to separate in order to make room for a growing baby. But it really freaked me out. I would be doing certain movements and exercises, and I would just see this dome/cone. They call it doning and combing, where you get this kind of like little mountain ridge that kind of juts out in between your abs. And, if you're in tune with your body and you're paying attention and you see something like that, it looks really freaky. And I ended up going to work with a pelvic floor physical therapist, and that was really incredible for a few reasons. That physical therapist taught me how to actually breathe and brace into those like deep transverse abdominal muscles that most people cannot properly engage.
Interesting.
And
okay.
even as like somebody who had been lifting for years at that point, doing a very, very simple exercise to try to get those muscles engaged was really, really hard. So I think that when you learn how to breathe right and brace right, like you said, my squat going up, I've noticed a huge change in the way that I squat and deadlift. And I can tell too, after I do a lift, if my bracing was just off just a little bit, that lift is not going to move as easily if I engaged properly. So,
and that's with a belt, without a belt, both.
I like wearing a belt when I get past like an RPE 7 or 8, or it depends too on reps. So if I'm doing more than like 3 reps, I prefer a belt because it's easier for me to feel myself bracing. And I don't think that, so the way that I use my belt is I can feel it's at an actual physical barrier that I can feel my belly breathing out against and making that contact with the belt. So that way I know I'm engaged. Does it actually support my back or do anything like that to help me be stronger? No, I don't think so. I think it maybe gives lifters a little bit of like a placebo effect, thinking like this is keeping me safe. But again, if you're bracing your core correctly, you don't really need a belt.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you said. Like, if I'm working in the 65 or 75% range, I'm not going to wear a belt. But as I warm up to doubles, triples, singles in that range, you're right. As it gets heavier, it helps with the intra-abdominal pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And you shouldn't rely on it for, preventing injury. Like I had back surgery last year and, I know that breathing properly helps, but you don't rely on it to have bad form, All right. So that's awesome. So we talked about you getting into powerlifting. Your coach, very soon after starting, got you to compete. Was that hard to do, or did you jump at the chance? Hey, listeners, this is Philip Pape, and I'm excited to announce our upcoming totally free 21-day challenge starting December 1st. It's called the Wits and Weights No Diet Holiday Body Recomp Challenge. This challenge is about learning how to achieve body recomposition. That's building muscle and losing fat at the same time without dieting or restriction throughout the holidays. I'll be giving you free videos, guides, and personalized coaching in a private group chat to help you enjoy the holidays while being satisfied and guilt-free. The kickoff call is Friday, November 17, and the link to enroll is in the show notes. No matter what episode you are listening to, don't worry. If you're hearing this after November 17, you can still register and get access to the replay and resources before the challenge starts on December 1st. Again, to join the Wits and Weights No Diet Holiday Body Recomp Challenge to build muscle and lose fat without dieting through the holidays, click the link in my show notes. Now back to the episode.
So I was kind of cocky or arrogant, I guess, when I first started my lifting career. I remember thinking that, I just pulled 315 for like the first time. These are newbie gains. I'm going to be pulling 400 in 6 months. And I remember my first meet. So the thing with powerlifting too is if you're training for a meet, you really should train with the commands. I don't know how much you want me to talk about that, but
I'd love to hear, because this is something I don't know much about, and I think the listeners would be fascinated with.
Okay. So with powerlifting and with any sport, right, there's always rules. And within the different federations in powerlifting, there are different rules as well. So I've competed in USAPL and USPA. They have very similar rules at the core, but they do have different rules as well. So what I'll be talking about is mostly as it relates to USPA, because that's what I'm most familiar with, and that the last 3 or 4 competitions that I've done have been USPA.
Yeah, sounds good.
So in the sport of powerlifting, there are three main lifts that you are tested or that you compete in, which is squat, bench, and deadlift. You have 3 attempts for each lift, so a total of 9 lifts for the day. And there are 3 judges, one that sits directly in front of you and 2 to the side. So often you'll hear like something like 3 white lights, and that's what you're going for. So the judges will all they're held to a standard. They have to be like either state qualified, nationally qualified judges. They have to sit through a test in order to qualify to be a judge. And then they actually have to sit for a certain number of meets as well in order to be like basically pass a standard that they're all judging to the same standard. And I make a point of that because different federations don't have standards like that. So if you go compete in, I don't want to throw shade, but I'm kind of going to, so like an RPS meet or something like that. Okay. I'm not really sure what their standards are for picking judges and stuff like that, but they're kind of notorious for people that squat really high
squats. Yeah.
Or like you'll just see they'll white light somebody and then the next person will go and you'll be like, what? That call made no sense.
It's not objective. Yeah.
Yeah. Which that's why I prefer, especially for new lifters, I think it's better to compete in like a USPA or USAPL federation. They're
which is drug tested, right? Drug tested.
USAPL is drug tested. Yep. USPA has tested and untested competitions. But they're both held to, like I said, really high standards. So that's important, So as I was saying, there's 3 judges and your goal is ultimately to get 2 out of the 3 judges to give you a white light, which means you pass the lift. You have to, you start with squat. And if you fail your squat on your first attempt, you have to retake that attempt again. If you fail it a second time, you get one last chance to take that squat. And if you fail it a third time, this is called something bombing out. You don't want to bomb out because then depending on the size of the meet, if it's a small local meet, they may still allow you to compete for the day, but it's not going to count.
Got it. And it ruins your total, of course.
Yeah, like you could potentially, you could have a really good day with bench and deadlift, but it doesn't actually count.
Sure.
You're not going to set any records or anything like that. So you want to be conservative with at least your first attempt when you pick it. It should be something that you could do, if you have a cold or a flu, you're not feeling well, you're really confident you're going to go under that bar and you're going to be able to hit that lift.
Got it. So you're not going to go for your all-time PR on the first lift.
No, probably not a good idea.
Yep.
So that's kind of how the day looks. And then there are things called flights, which are based on weight class usually. So there will usually be a flight A, B, C. And depending on if the meet is split up into like one large meet for the day, or sometimes if it's they'll split it into 2, which I prefer meets that are held on 2 days. Usually they'll have like the females on one day and the males on the other day. And that makes for a shorter day because otherwise, like you'll go squat, like meets typically start around 9 a.m. I'm in one of the first classes because I'm a relatively small female, and I'll squat and be done by like 10 squatting. And I'm not going to bench probably until like noon. And I'm not going to deadlift until 2 or 3 p.m. So it's a long day.
There's a lot of rest between lifts. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of, so you have to be smart too with like how you warm up and how quickly you do that. But ideally you have a coach and a handler if your coach is not also your handler. And that handler should be somebody who can help you literally handle you throughout your day to make sure that you're staying hydrated, you're eating, you're not just sitting there eating candy, right? That was something that I did a lot during my first meet, is because I remember going to that meet where I watched my friend compete and seeing all these powerlifters eating donuts and Sour Patch Kids and classic, like bananas and just like kind of crap food all day long. So I thought that's just what you do. That's what powerlifters do on the day of a meet.
Got to refill the glycogen, right?
Yeah. But then as it went on and I competed more, I noticed that stuff is not something that I eat on a regular basis. And, I don't have stomach issues per se, but if like my nerves are going and then I'm eating something that I'm not used to eating, the last thing you want to have to be doing on the day of a meet is be running to the bathroom. That's not any fun.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, definitely. I would say for people who are just getting started into powerlifting, just pick a local meet. If it's in the state that you live in, that's great. There's no point in traveling really far for your first meet. It's that traveling in and of itself is stressful, and you want to limit as many things as you can to, have a good day.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's, costs less. You don't have to travel. You mentioned, powerlifting or competing in general can be intimidating for some people. It's not something I've ever considered, to be honest. Maybe in the master's class, it'd be a good thing to consider. But you talked about at the beginning, you thought you were being a little arrogant about your lifts. And so what happened there?
Yeah. So I actually had wrote down, if I can find it in my notes, my first meet. So my first meet was in September of 2016. Like I said, I competed in USAPL. I went 6 for 9 for the day, which isn't great. I think I had jumped some commands. So I remember hitting my third squat, and I squatted it perfectly, right? But that's one of the things too that I forgot, I neglected to mention earlier when I was talking about how powerlifting is set up. You're given commands. So for the first lift squat, there is 2 commands, and you'll unrack the bar. You have a minute too. So as soon as you get on, they'll say platform ready. The lifter walks out onto the platform. You have a minute to do the lift, which that's another thing too, that a lot of new lifters or new competitors will think that they're rushing, and they go fast. A minute seems like a short amount of time, but if you're ready, you're standing there, you're chalked up, you're ready to go, your lift is going to take about 10 seconds. So take your time.
Take a breath. Okay.
Take a breath, set up, try to tune all the noise. Don't look at the spectators. Focus on like that head judge, because he's going to have his hand up like this, and he's going to say squat, and his hand is going to come down. You're going to squat, you're going to stand up, and then you're going to wait for the rack command. And that is something that a lot of new lifters don't do, especially if they nail the lift, because they're excited. They're like, yes. And then they rack it too soon. And then you got 3 red lights because you didn't wait for a command.
Now explain that to me, because I always wondered that command as well as the bench pause at the bottom. Like I always wondered about why do they exist? It's one of, so don't quote me, right? I'm not a USPA judge, but it's a control thing for one. So I know for bench, right? The point of so with bench, that's one of the more technical lifts. There's 3 commands. So they'll say start, you'll unrack the bench or the bar, and you'll bring the bar down, and you want to bring that bar down slow and controlled. The more slow and controlled that you bring that bar down, the faster you're going to get an up command. Got it.
Or press command, I should say. So if you bring that bar down sloppily and it's kind of like coming down and you have no control over that bar, what the judges are looking for is no movement in the barbell. That's why those commands exist. And I think it's another thing that has to do with standards, right? Like you have to squat to a certain depth, which is like breaking parallel. With bench, your butt can't come up off the bench. USPA, your head can come off the bench, but USAPL, it cannot. Your feet, they can be up, like you can be up on your toes. Some people, I lift that way. Other people have their heels completely flat, but your feet cannot move. They cannot slide or anything like that, or it can't actually lift up off the floor. And it's just, in my opinion, it's a way to kind of make it so that way there is a standard across the sport. That way everybody's kind of lifting to the same. It's hard to grade something or judge something when you don't have like standards, I guess.
All right, fair enough.
So deadlift is the easiest one. You go out there, you pull that bar, and then they just say down, and that's it. So a lot of new lifters will they'll go out there and they'll wait. They think like you're going to get a command to say like start or something, but you don't. So it'll be like this awkward thing where like
it's just up to you.
The judges aren't allowed to talk to the lifter. They're not be like, okay, go now, So sometimes it's funny. You'll see like when it's somebody that's like 60 years old and it's their first meet and they're super excited, and it's a local meet too. Most, a friend of mine is actually the meet director for USPA. They're not going to take it that seriously. Like if somebody's like, okay, you just start, it's not a big deal. But if you're competing at like the national level or, even higher than that, you're not going to get that leeway, I guess.
Sure.
That was another thing too. And I was talking about being arrogant. I remember doing my first meet and I had a few friends who had competed at the national level. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go to nationals next year. that did not happen.
You got to start somewhere. I mean, I like the ambition, right? To push yourself. Let's talk numbers. You made a lot of progress over the years, especially even in the last few years. I saw, the excitement of you getting back into it with your training partner.
Right.
I mean, if you don't mind, sharing your PRs or even just the process you went through to get to this point.
So my very first meet, I totaled 650 pounds. I think I squatted about 225, maybe. I benched around 115 pounds. And I deadlifted, I want to say like 315. And I was stoked to get an over 300 pound deadlift. I thought that was so cool.
It's awesome. I mean, you got it done, that's great.
Yep. And then my second meet was a little less than a year later in May of 2017. I totaled 705.5 pounds, which that's a decent
jump.
Jump, right? I think that's probably, I'm looking at it. To add anything more than add 50 pounds plus to your total.
Yeah, it's like 20%, something like that.
Right. Yeah.
It's a ton. Yeah.
The following meet I did was in August of 2018. So about a year later, and I totaled 716. So there wasn't much progress there. That was only about, 10 pounds that I added to my total. I did another meet the following spring in April of 2019, and I totaled 743.4. So, I mean, I'm still making progress every meet. My total was getting better, which is something that I didn't actually even realize until I started preparing for this conversation, actually. So I was proud of myself. I gave myself a little pat on the back for seeing that, like, hey, you know what? It doesn't always feel like you're going in a smooth line, right?
Right.
With lifting, but overall, my journey with lifting, it has been pretty good.
Because in the moment you feel like you're not quite where you want to be, but relative to the last time, you're still getting stronger. And that's the point, right? That's the point.
Yeah, for sure. And so the fifth meet that I did was in November of 2021. So can't believe that was already almost like 6 months ago. I totaled over 800 pounds, which that was a huge goal for me.
Wow.
I totaled 804.7 pounds. And I have to say that was probably the best meet of my life. For a bunch of reasons. There was a lot going on at that time. My husband was deployed. My kid had been sick like nonstop. I know you have children too, Philip, and it's probably been a while since they've been in daycare, but my goodness, they
catch everything.
At that point, I wasn't even worried about COVID. It was just like hand, foot, mouth disease, stomach bug. It was so bad. And then I had gotten sick right before the meet and wasn't good, but I ended up going 9 for 9 that day, which was a first. I had never hit all of my attempts on all of my lifts. I squatted 303 that day, and it flew. And I could have cried, for me to squat over 300 pounds. That took six years for me to get to that point. So that was a really good day for me. And my friend, my training partner, was going to compete in March because she had actually broke her foot that fall, and it kind of threw things off because initially she was going to compete with me in that meet as well. She didn't end up competing, but I still did. And despite all of the crazy stress that I had going on in my life, I had a great day. So I was really stoked about that. And then the most recent meet that I did, I came in first too at that meet.
That's awesome.
So that was
Look
cool.
at that.
But there may have only been, I think there were only 3 people, 2 or 3. I'll have to look at that. So there may have only been 2 people in the meet, and I came in first, which, whatever, but whatever. Still got the first place. That was cool. My most recent meet was in March of this year, and I totaled 821.2. I did not squat over 300 pounds like I did in November, but I added about 10 pounds to my bench. So I benched 175 point something, which was really awesome. I think for a lot of, I don't know about men, but for females, bench is probably one of the harder lifts to see go up and progress.
Sure. You stall pretty quickly on that one.
Yeah. It's pretty hard to make big achievements there. Like usually a 5-pound PR, couple pound PRs is huge. Whereas squat and deadlift, I feel like there's a little bit more room for bigger PRs. So for me to bench 175, that was, and it wasn't super slow either. I felt like I still had more gas in the tank, which was pretty awesome to think that, back in 2016, when I went to see my friend compete and I was watching female lifters about the same size as me benching close to 200 pounds, and me thinking, oh, that's going to be me next year. And then me a few years into powerlifting being like, I am never going to bench over 150 pounds, to now benching over 150 pounds. It's really cool to see that happen. And then deadlift.
Was that something you specifically focused on, that lift leading up to that, or just kind of got lucky and pushed it up more than the others?
No, I will have to credit that to having a really awesome coach.
Okay.
I think benching more or doing more arm or upper body, like
accessory work,
variations of benching, I think is important. Like, don't just bench once a week, or overhead pressing, which I know you're a big fan of.
Huge.
That's huge too. Like, if you can overhead press a lot, you could probably have a pretty big bench. So yeah, bench, that was probably, I don't know. It's hard to say between bench and deadlift, because deadlift has been a lift that I have struggled on forever. And like you, not as severe. I definitely have not had back surgery or anything like that, but I have had back pain on and off ever since I started strength training. Like, I can remember, you'll pull your back doing something, or you might not feel it when it happens. And then you go home and you're like, okay, yeah, this isn't good. And then you lay down in bed and you're like, I can't get up. Mm-hmm. You can't walk. And it's just that like crippling feeling of pain. And I've gone to PT and chiropractors, and after a couple of weeks, it starts to get better. And I still don't know whether or not that was it the dry needling? Was it all of the PT? Was it the chiropractor?
It's like black magic sometimes.
Or was it just time though, right? Like sometimes time it just takes time for you to heal a strain, muscle strain or something like that. But hurting my back a couple of times made me kind of afraid to deadlift. I was especially so I pulled conventional for the longest time.
I see.
And I tend to pull out of position more so on conventional. My back will round like a cat as I'm pulling, which you don't want that to happen. I mean, you
right. You want to set your back.
Yeah.
Some elite lifters get away with, odd form, and they develop and adapt to it over time. But yeah, generally you don't want to do that.
Right. And that's the thing too, like form is important. I think I believe that it is. It may not be the only thing that keeps you from getting injured, but it's definitely going to minimize that. And it is a lot of weight too. It's a lot of weight.
Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you for listening to the podcast. If you find it valuable, you would be doing me a huge favor by sharing it on social media. Just take a screenshot, share it to your Instagram story or Facebook. Please tag me so I can personally thank you, and we can talk about what you found helpful and how I can improve. Again, an incredible thank you for supporting the podcast, and enjoy the rest of the episode.
So I was afraid to lift over 300 pounds for a long time, and I would constantly sandbag deadlifts. Like, I would just not put in a lot of effort because I don't want to push it. I don't want to
just out of fear. Okay.
Yeah. But at that meet, so the meet that I just did with my friend Sam, it's funny because the whole day, right? Like, so I went, squats just weren't feeling good. But I squatted 297 on my second attempt, and Sam and my our coach and everybody was like, you squatted 303 at your last meet, go for 308. I kind of knew it wasn't there that day, but I was all right, 308. Had I had chosen 303, would I have gotten it? I'm honestly not sure. I don't think so. 297 did not move that well, but I ended up failing that third attempt. So I was calculating, right? So I knew Sam had she got all three of her lifts in squat. I think she squatted around 275. So then when bench came, I was doing the math in my head, because as much as I'm happy for my friend, and I am, the whole point of competing is you want to win. Why compete if you don't want to win, right? So I'm in my head thinking, okay, what do I have to hit on bench? What do I have to hit on deadlift to get a first place here? And so I had failed my third attempt, so I knew I had 10 pounds on the squat. And then for bench, we took the same attempts for bench. Our bench is very, very close. And she failed her third attempt at 175. So she just got 165 for bench, but her deadlift has 20 plus pounds on mine.
Okay.
So I hit my third attempt in bench 175. So then I had her in the squat and the bench squat by 10 pounds, bench by 10 pounds. but I knew when deadlifts were coming, I'm like, she's got like 20 to 25 pounds on
She
me.
had you by the same amount.
Yeah,
of the other two. Okay, got it.
So in my head, I'm thinking like, this is so close. And I was so happy for Sam too. Like I said, we're training partners and it's friendly competition. So we go for deadlifts, and like her third deadlift attempt was amazing. Like I was as excited for her on that third attempt that I was for myself on my third attempt. I can't remember what she pulled, but I think around like 370, 369 or something like that, which is huge. And I had pulled 336 at my meet in November, which was a PR by a couple of pounds. And I went for it on my third attempt. I was like, whatever, I'm just going to go for it, because if I don't hit this, I'm definitely not going to get first place. So I went for 347.2, I think. I don't know what the.
So more than 10-pound PR, you're saying?
Yeah, 336 in November, 347. Yeah. 11 point something pounds. And I pulled and I pulled and I pulled, and I waited for that down command, and I got it. And then I looked, and the lights were actually broken for my third attempt. So they have like little buttons that they press for the red and white lights. And in the video, you can see me like look, and I look like a crazy person because I'm like, where are the lights? Where are the lights? And they had paper. So the judges held up like a white sheet of paper. And I was like, yeah.
Awesome.
So I got three.
And then you thought, okay, I won, right?
Well, I don't know. So I didn't talk about the other Sam. At that point, I was not convinced that I had won the meet or out totaled my friend Sam, because I have not talked about the other Sam who was competing in our weight class that day. So there was another Sam in our weight class, and I think that might've been her first meet. She's a new lifter, but she's strong as hell. She has phenomenal deadlift technique. Her squat and bench isn't that great, but most lifters aren't when they first start. And I think that if she sticks with the sport, she's going to be a national level athlete, like most likely. She outpulled Sam and I, and like I said, she's been lifting for like 6 months, I think. I'm not sure. But yeah, she was really strong. So Sam and I out totaled Sam R, and I out totaled Sam L. However, Sam L pulled significantly more than us, and she's younger than us too. She's still in college. So, she's got a lot of years to get better and to get stronger. And I think she absolutely will. So so then after the meet, right? Like I was saying, it's a long day. After we got done competing, because there were 2 sessions in one day, the whole meet day goes till about 7 or 8 o'clock, which kind of stinks. Like you're stuck there for a long time. My husband and son did come down to, I think they saw like some of my bench and deadlift, but like I have a toddler, and he likes to be running and not in a gym like that cooped up. And it's not really something that's super fun for my husband to sit and watch either. So they weren't going to stick around till like, medals were being handed out and stuff like that. And I wasn't sure that I was going to stick around for medals too, because if I'm not placing, I don't really care. And it just takes too long, to be there you're there from 8 a.m. to like 8 p.m. It's a long day.
Yep.
But me, Sam R, and Sam L, we were all very friendly. And that's another thing that I love about the sport of powerlifting too, is most people aren't, for lack of a better word, like dicks. Like most people are really kind and helpful and want to help you. Right. So if you're warming up and there's one, so at this past meet, we used a squat bar, which has knurling all across it, versus like a power bar that has knurling in the middle and knurling on the sides. I prefer a power bar just because that's what I've used for the last 10 plus years. So I know exactly where my hands go.
Yeah. You know where the rings are and everything. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Sam R, my training partner, and I had been training on a squat bar for the whole entire meet prep. But I still, when I walk up to that bar, I'm like, where the heck do I put my pinkies? I need to like break out a friggin' ruler and measure it, because it throws me off. So, like I was saying though, like in the sport of powerlifting, I have found that most people are very kind and helpful and friendly. And I have a pretty outgoing personality too. So when I'm at a meet, I'll just walk up to somebody and be like, hey, I really like your singlet. Where'd you get it? Just to start conversation and kind of have that icebreaker and like let people know, like, yes, it is a competition, but we're all here to first and foremost have fun. And that's been something that I've learned too over the years, is that don't take yourself so seriously. If you walk into that meet and you've got your headphones on and you're like, screw everybody, I'm just here to like crush PRs. If you fail a lift and you're in that mindset of like, angry powerlifter, you're probably going to get like down on yourself and it's just going to spiral.
Yeah, it's going to be devastating. Stay friendly, enjoy the community. It sounds like a great community. And you've been doing it now for, like you said, 6 years, right? You talked about your training partner, Sam. You guys have like a friendly competition, so to speak, and you also push each other, it looks like, in training. I mean, what does your training look like? Maybe talk about what it's like to have a training partner. What, advice for some people listening as to how that works.
Yeah. So I never had a training partner up until about the end of 2020, right? I had powerlifting coaches who prescribed my training. And then this was before I had a child, and, that takes up a lot of my time now. But before then I would go to the gym and I would spend about 3 hours a day, maybe 4, 5, 6 days a week at the gym. Was I training for 3 hours? Absolutely not. I was probably training for an hour and a half, maybe 2 max, but it was a big social thing for me. So instead of like going to a bar or something like that, that's what I did. And like I said, a lot of my close friends now are still people that train at Lightning Fitness, but it just wasn't conducive for my life at that point anymore to train like that. And even like I had said,
because of how much time it took.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just wasn't something that I was really super interested in. I was breastfeeding, which that's a whole other thing too. Like I didn't like to be away from my baby for that long. I didn't want to have to like bring a pump or anything like that. It was just too much. The thought was just very overwhelming. And COVID that was kind of the height of COVID as well. So the gym had just opened back up and I was not comfortable. I had a newborn baby. Vaccines were not a thing yet. I just wasn't comfortable being around a bunch of maskless people at the gym because, like, say what you will.
Totally understandable.
Nope. Didn't want to do it.
Yeah, you've got a baby at home. I understand.
So, I was kind of in this like depressed maybe state in that end of 2020. I stopped lifting. So if I back up a little bit to my pregnancy, when I noticed the whole diastasis recti thing going on, the coach that I had at the time was not very receptive of it. And I don't know how much experience he had with coaching pregnant athletes, but I knew that was a niche that other coaches had more experience with. So I decided
this is the abdominal issue you talked about.
Yeah.
Earlier,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
The ab separation.
Just to clarify and I can't relate. So,
no. But I had read up on it that there were certain ways to breathe, and my physical therapist too was like, absolutely no. What the heck is it called? Like valgus breathing. When you do a squat or a double, you hold your breath.
Valsalva maneuver.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep. She was like, don't do that. Like, imagine like your abdominal area is a canister. And when you do Valsalva maneuver, you're putting so much pressure on like your pelvic floor, and like there's already a baby growing there, and you don't want to add all of that pressure, because what happens when there's too much pressure, things can.
Oh, interesting. So you're being advised not to do that because of your unique situation.
Well, she just said during pregnancy in general, not a good idea to breathe like that.
Okay. Anybody who's pregnant. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You really should breathe through the lift, which that was completely foreign to me, to breathe through a squat, breathe through a deadlift.
Oh, so it's like you have to brace while breathing. Is that the idea?
Like you're not holding your breath at all. You're trying to minimize as much pressure as you're putting on that like pelvic girdle area. So like I said, my coach didn't really know a lot about it, wasn't really comfortable with it. So I switched to Brianna Battles, which if you are a female in this world and you have been pregnant or you know anything about that, like she's pretty big in that area. So she had a pregnant and postpartum athlete training. And I actually really liked her program. It was more of like a CrossFit kind of like power building type of thing. We still squatted a lot. Not really a lot of bench, but like I still deadlifted. She was big on the, breathing through each lift. They had the app, I think, Teachable. So
okay, sure.
It was really easy to work with. You could like watch a video of them doing the lifts if you needed the.
Yeah, that's great. So you found something that worked for you being pregnant. Yeah.
Yep. It worked really well. And then that was like 3 months into 2020. And that was when the pandemic hit. So I stopped having access to a gym, and at the time did not have a home gym to train at. And nobody knew what the heck was going on with COVID. So
this will be over in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And I kind of just was like, oh, whatever. And I stopped training. And my husband, like I said, has always been a runner. So he's like, well, why don't you like pick up running? So I started running like a mile around the neighborhood, 2 miles, 3 miles, like, okay, I can do this, which I do not recommend starting like a completely new exercise regimen, like 20 weeks into a pregnancy. Probably not a good idea. So my husband was going for a longer run at like one of the rail trails in our area. And he's like, I'm doing a 5 miler today. I'm like, okay, yeah, 5 miles, no big deal. He's like, you sure? You've only like run 2 or 3 miles. Yeah, I've got it, no problem. So I ran the 5 miles. It was an out and back, and was playing it cool. Like, yeah, I'm fine. And then by the time I got home, I was like, I'm not fine. I think I ran maybe a couple more times. And then I just kind of stopped lifting, like up until we ended up getting a bunch of dumbbells, bought them off of Facebook Marketplace for a decent price. So I was doing some exercises.
Yeah, I can totally relate. Yeah. Very few people had home gyms at that point.
But not structured. Like it was not structured at all. I'd stopped following that pregnant athlete program. Wasn't really doing anything. Then I had a baby. We bought a house. My husband was taking like a bunch of classes. He was going back into the office now because at the time he was like active duty military leading up to his deployment. So it was just really, really busy. And I could just feel I had, my maternity leave was up. I was going back to work. I was really stressed out about my son going to daycare because of COVID. I wasn't sure how I would feel about going back to work. I'm really grateful to be in a situation where had I had wanted to stay home, we would have been able to do that. He went to daycare. I went back to work and I was like, yep, this is definitely where I like to be. So that worked out. And then that was probably around like November, October timeframe. December, our family ended up getting COVID. And I was just bummed. I just like, I was asymptomatic, didn't have any symptoms. My husband was really sick. The baby was sick. And I just was just not feeling good. And it's so hard to look back on that time and say like, why wasn't I feeling good? Was it because I stopped lifting?
Sure.
Was it because I gave birth? Was it because I gave birth during a pandemic? Was it all these things combined, right? Like there was a lot going on, probably all of the above. So my husband was like, you're miserable and you're kind of no fun to be around. And I really think you should go back to your gym because
that's what you love. And that's what makes you feel good. Right.
Yeah. And I was just like, the thought of driving to the gym and like doing it, like it sounded good, but I wasn't sure if that was the right move. So I had reached out to my friend Sam, and during the pandemic, her husband started building a really kick-ass home gym. It took them some time, of course, over the year with like all the shortages and whatnot, but they got some awesome equipment. And she was like, hey, why don't you come train with me? And that was actually, so the company that Philip and I work for, it shuts down between Christmas and New Year's. We get like a week off. So that week, Sam invited me to come train with her. And I went there, and Sam's husband, Carlos Reyes, he's a professional powerlifter, like ranked, I think like number 8 in the world.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Very strong guy. I look up to him. Like if Carlos gives me some advice, I'm definitely like, okay, yep, got it. So Carlos asked me that morning, he was like, what are you training today? And I was like, oh, I don't really know. Not sure. And Sam's like, well, why don't you do my program with me? And I was like looking at Sam, and she's jacked and strong and does her program daily. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do your program, but I'll try it. Right. So
daily meaning like a 7-day program or?
Oh, no, sorry. She trains like, I think she's been training like 4 days a week.
Like 4-day split. Yeah.
Yeah. For years now, but poor choice of words. So yeah. So she's been training on a weekly basis, whatever, consistently.
Sure. Understood.
And I had not been. So I knew whatever I did that day, I was going to be sore, but whatever. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I did all the same movements as her, but she was squatting with weight on the bar. I was squatting with the barbell, and 45 pounds felt really heavy. And I remember like, I think the day or two later, she's like, okay, like you coming over to train? I'm like, nah, I don't think so, Sam. I don't think I'm going to make it. Like, I feel like I got hit by a bus. I can't remember what she said to me. I wish I still had the text, but she was basically like, come on, don't be like a chicken. Like,
sure. I can imagine.
Yeah. Like the soreness doesn't last forever. Like just get here and train. And I was like, fine. And so I went back, and the rest is kind of history, right? Like since then, her and I have been training consistently for a year and a half now. And well, we knew my husband was deploying. That wasn't like a surprise. So leading up to the deployment, I had said to my husband, like, listen, we have 2 garage bays. And I said, we're turning one of them into a gym, because I know I'm not going to be able to get to Sam's house to train 4 days a week. It's probably not going to happen. I'm going to be doing things completely solo for 7 months. So we need to get gym equipment, making that a priority. And we did. And I'm glad that I did. Because it made being able to train for like my powerlifting meet in November a possibility when my kid was really sick. And the only time I could train was at night after he went to bed, which I do not prefer training at night. I definitely prefer training. If I had it my way and I didn't work, I would train at like 10 a.m. every day.
Sure.
After breakfast.
You get the energy going. It's not too late in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, I hear you, because I have to train early in the morning, because of work. So
right.
There's a lot to unpack here. Because what I want to, the heart of the matter here is the consistency. It sounds like you got significantly detrained. We had the pandemic, so you didn't have a place to go. It's always a hassle to even go to a gym, right? Even when there is one available. So yes. You had somebody that held you accountable, which, maybe not everybody has that, but at the end of the day, it got you to train regularly. And then you did the home gym thing, which I've done. And I think I constantly encourage my listener to really think about that. It's a small investment compared to what you get out of it and the time you save. And it's there, right? Staring you in the face. So you can't help but train.
Yeah, exactly. And, my husband uses it too, even though he is a runner, like he does do some stuff. So it's getting its use, and it'll last forever.
No, runners don't train, do they?
But, it'll, if you take care of it, it's going to last forever. And you just can't, it's invaluable, I guess.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I want to respect your time. I think I had one last question I wanted to ask. And that is, do people ever question or misunderstand what you're doing?
All of the time, Philip. Okay. I'll pick a couple of things to talk about. First thing is, older family members, not even older, just family members will be like, you're going to break your back. You're going to hurt yourself. That's too much weight. Like, or no, you just like the stereotypes about like me being a girl or me being a woman and lifting, and it's not feminine. And like, like whatever, like, no, actually, like lifting, and I don't, and I'm.
Or you're going to get too big, right? Do you get that one? Like, you're going to get too big, or no?
My coach actually said this to me the other day. My nutrition coach, she had said like, I forget, something about giving out free advice. Like, just don't do it, basically, because people aren't going to listen to you. I can't tell you how many people have asked me like, oh, you're in shape, you lift weights, or can you help me? How do I get to your point? And you give them like really basic information,
right? And
then they proceed to not do any of it.
Right.
Or they'll say like, well, I don't want to get like big muscles. I just want to get toned.
I don't want to look like a bodybuilder.
And I hate the word.
As I lift those 10-pound dumbbells, I'm gonna look like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, and I hate the word toned, because I'm like, what does toned even mean? Like, do you want to put on some lean muscle mass? Like, what? But yeah. So I think the biggest thing I get is you're gonna hurt yourself. That has been like from the start. And I look back on some videos, right, and I'm like, ooh, that is a cringy looking deadlift. But never.
You have to figure it out at some point. Yeah, okay, because I didn't want to mention the female angle, right? But you hit the nail on the head with I think that not a double standard, but I mean, like if somebody, I'm a dude, and I'm saying I'm working out, people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense, like that's generally accepted. But I imagine with being a woman that you get some weird look sometimes. That's why I wanted to ask the question.
Yeah, or just the fact when I say I'm like power lifter, people are like, what?
Sure. Yeah.
Like female power lifter. But it's so weird because I'm so far removed from that stage in my life. I've been a power lifter now for so many years. So a lot of the circles that I'm in and the feeds that I follow are curated to other female lifters. So that's just the world that I live in.
You're in that community now. Yeah.
And every so often I'll talk to a friend who doesn't strength train, and they'll say something that's just wild to me, like wearing waist trainers, or they're doing just tons and tons of cardio, and they're like, I can't lose weight. And they're eating like 1,200 calories a day. And I'm like, dude, my toddler eats more than you.
Right. Metabolic adaptation, too much cardio. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, it stinks. Like I really do think strength is for everyone. I'd sent Philip a video the other day of like a woman who's in her 70s strength training. And I was like, that is so cool.
Yeah, Shelly. Yep.
You know, like you're never too old to start strength training. It really is for everyone. And you're probably going to lead a longer, healthier life if you do lift some weights.
That's what I totally advocate what you're saying. And how would you so people listening to this podcast do want some advice. What is your advice for somebody who's maybe either brand new or even maybe recreational, wants to get more into powerlifting?
Work with a coach. That's probably the biggest thing in order for it to be sustainable and for you to not actually hurt yourself if you don't know what you're doing. Because I don't know the science behind it and why I lift the way that I lift. Like if you ask me what kind of program are you on, I'm like, I think it's a power building right now, the phase that we're in, but I don't know like the reason that we lift in the way that we do, but I know that it works.
Sure.
And I have full faith in my coach to prescribe a program that's going to keep me healthy and safe and having fun. Right. So that's probably my number one piece of advice. And the second advice is just pick a meet and sign up and do it.
Awesome. Don't commit yourself.
Yeah. Don't wait until like I have to be this strong before I can do it, because the sport of powerlifting, unless you are at that like elite national level, you're really competing against yourself at the end of the day. So if you're making PRs and you're, continuing to have progress, then at the end of the day, you can be happy because you're just competing against yourself, really.
Awesome. So find a good coach, however you can, get into it, be consistent, have fun with it, sign up for a meet, go get at it and have fun and get strong.
Absolutely.
So Tyla, where can listeners find more about you?
I am on Instagram at Tyla Serro. I don't think there's a dash in there.
No, I think it's one word. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Tyla Serro.
Tyla Serro. And if you have any questions or if you're new into lifting, I'd be happy to give you some advice. I am not an expert, not a coach, but I can at least talk about my own personal experiences with the sport.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Before you go, I do have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy the podcast, just let me know by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts. This will help others find the podcast in search results, which makes a huge difference. Thanks again for joining me, your host, Philip Pape, in this episode of Wits and Weights. I'll see you next time, and stay strong.